the top marginal personal income tax rate in BC is 43.7% for high income earners, including the federal tax. Generally speaking, would you like to see the rich paying more in personal income tax or less in personal income tax than they do now?
Well, I think governments always struggle, and any government, whether they're left, right, or center as governments, governments have to try to find an effective balance between a taxation level that still makes it worthwhile for people to want to live, to work, and to operate a business in a jurisdiction.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not talking about the business taxes though.
Yeah, no,
just
you're talking
personal
about personal
income
taxes.
So just generally speaking, do you favor raising the rates on higher income individuals,
yes,
or lowering the rates on higher income individuals?
I favor a progressive tax system where proportionately those who are wealthiest would pay a higher percentage of their income towards taxation than with the lowest income tax payers.
Is 43.7% a good rate, or do you think it should be higher than that?
Well, I think it's probably an acceptable rate. I haven't given a great deal of thought to that. It's something that we're always prepared to look at, but I think 43.7 is probably a reasonable starting place for this.
Okay. Premier Gordon Campbell and his minister responsible for housing, Rich Coleman, have refused to publicly call for a national housing strategy. And Canada's the only major industrialized country that doesn't have a national housing strategy. I'm wondering, if you become Premier, will you publicly ask the federal government to develop a national housing strategy?
Well, so I had the honor of being the housing minister for British Columbia for about 3 years, from 2001 to 2004, and we worked extensively with the federal government back then with respect to housing. I think the challenge with the federal government and housing is that even as early as 2001, 2002, the federal government of the day, and certainly it's been true of every federal government since that time, they were working to minimize their contributions in terms of housing, or in fact extricate themselves generally from the field. And I think that continues to be the case today. So I certainly wouldn't try to encourage the federal government to do a housing strategy unless they were prepared to become fulsome partners, i.e. one-third partners, for example, with the local governments and with the provincial government on housing works. It has always been my view, based on my experience particularly in health, where as Minister of Health we would see the federal government do national strategies which would try to force the provinces to undertake certain changes in the way that health care was provided or administered or operated, but not be adding in a very fulsome way dollars to the pot to make that work. So if you're going to have a national strategy, I think it's imperative that there be a national budget to backstop that strategy. In health, what we have is the Canada Health Act was brought in as 40 years or more ago now. Hard to believe, it's been that long. But originally, as part of the Canada Health Act, it was 50-50 in terms of the operational costs of healthcare. Since that time, we've seen the diminution of the federal contributions, generally speaking, proportionately to the province, so that now, even though the federal government contributes somewhere between $3 and $4 billion for healthcare, the overall cost is now about $16 billion, and the federal contribution has declined very, very substantially. So I wouldn't want to get into a situation where the national government is calling the shots, and this would apply whether it's a Liberal government, Conservative government, or NDP government. I don't want to see us in a situation where the federal government, through a housing strategy, tries to dictate what we do provincially, but doesn't backstop it with dollars.